Welcome to Learn JavaScript in 10 minutes. By the end of this course you will understand the foundations of the most widely used programming language on the planet. So what is JavaScript? JavaScript is the only programming language that runs natively inside every web browser. It was created in just 10 days back in 1995 by Brendan Eich at Netscape, which is remarkable given how powerful it became. Today, JavaScript powers every interactive website you have ever visited. It is used by 98% of all websites, making it the most widely deployed programming language in existence. And with Node.js, you can now use JavaScript on the server side as well, meaning one language can handle your entire application, front end and back end. Let's dive in. One of the best things about JavaScript is you can start immediately with zero setup. The fastest way is your browser's developer console. Press F12 in any browser, click the console tab, and you can type and run JavaScript right there. For building real projects, create an HTML file and link a separate JavaScript file using a script tag. The third option is Node.js, which lets you run JavaScript files directly in your terminal, just like Python. For writing code, Visual Studio Code is the industry standard. It is free, fast, and has excellent JavaScript support. But honestly, to follow along with this course, just open your browser console and you are ready to go. In modern JavaScript there are three keywords for declaring variables: const, let, and var. Const creates a variable that cannot be reassigned. Once you set it, the value is locked. Use const by default for everything. Let creates a variable that can be reassigned. Use this when you know the value will change, like a counter or a running total. Var is the old way of declaring variables from before 2015. It has some confusing behavior and you should avoid it in modern code. A simple rule to follow. Start with const, and only switch to let if you find yourself needing to reassign the value. This makes your code more predictable and easier to read. JavaScript has several built-in data types. Strings hold text and can use single quotes, double quotes, or backticks. Numbers in JavaScript cover both integers and decimals. Unlike Python, there is only one number type. Booleans are true or false. Null means a variable intentionally has no value. Undefined means a variable was declared but never given a value. You can check what type any value is using the type of operator. One important modern feature is template literals. Strings wrapped in backticks where you can embed any expression inside $sign and curly braces. JavaScript has three ways to write functions. The classic function declaration uses the function keyword followed by a name and parentheses. Function expressions assign a function to a variable. And arrow functions, introduced in 2015, are the modern shorthand that most developers use today. Arrow functions are more concise. If the function body is a single expression, you can skip the curly braces and the return keyword entirely. All three approaches produce functions that work the same way. Over time you will see all three in real codebases, so it is important to recognize them all. Default to arrow functions for new code, but understand the others when you read existing projects. If statements in JavaScript work similarly to other languages. The important thing to know is the difference between double equals and triple equals. Double equals does loose comparison. It converts types before comparing, so the number 5 and the string 5 are considered equal. This leads to very unexpected bugs. Triple equals does strict comparison. It checks both the value and the type. Always use triple equals in JavaScript. The ternary operator is a clean one-line shorthand for simple if-else decisions. The condition comes first, then a question mark, then the value if true, then a colon, then the value if false. It is very commonly used when assigning variables conditionally. JavaScript offers several ways to loop. The classic for loop has 3 parts separated by semicolons: initialization, condition, and increment. It runs as long as the condition is true. For arrays, the modern preferred approach is forEach. It calls a function once for each item, passing the item as an argument. The for of loop is even cleaner for simply iterating through values. The while loop runs as long as its condition remains true. Always make sure the condition eventually becomes false, or you will create an infinite loop. In modern JavaScript you will see forEach and for of most frequently in professional code, so get comfortable with those. Arrays in JavaScript store ordered lists of values. You access items by index starting at 0. Push adds to the end, pop removes from the end, and unshift adds to the beginning. But where JavaScript arrays really shine is the powerful built-in methods that work with functions. Map transforms every item in an array. Here we double every number. It returns a brand new array, leaving the original unchanged. Filter creates a new array containing only items that pass a test. Here we keep only even numbers. Reduce processes all items and accumulates them into a single value. Perfect for calculating totals or building objects from arrays. These 3 methods, map, filter, and reduce, are fundamental to modern JavaScript and you will use them every day. Objects in JavaScript store data as key-value pairs and are at the heart of almost everything in the language. You create an object with curly braces, listing each property as a key-value pair separated by a colon. You can access properties using dot notation or square bracket notation. Objects can also contain functions. These are called methods. Inside a method, the this keyword refers to the object itself. 2 powerful modern features are destructuring and the spread operator. Destructuring lets you extract multiple properties from an object into separate variables in one clean line. The spread operator, the 3 dots, copies all properties of an object into a new one. Perfect for creating modified copies without mutating the original. The Document Object Model, or DOM, is what makes JavaScript so powerful for web development. The DOM is a programming interface that represents your HTML page as a tree of objects that JavaScript can read and manipulate. You can select any HTML element using getElement by id for a single element, or query selector all for multiple elements matching a CSS selector. Once selected, you can change an element's text content, modify its styles, add or remove CSS classes, or even create entirely new elements and inject them into the page. The addEventListener method is how you respond to user interactions, clicks, keyboard presses, mouse movements, form submissions, and much more. This is the bridge between your code and your user's experience. Since 2015, JavaScript has received major improvements every year under the ES6+ banner. Destructuring works on arrays too. You can unpack values by position and use the rest operator, 3 dots, to capture remaining items into a new array. Default parameters let you specify fallback values when a function is called without an argument. Optional chaining, the question mark dot, is a game changer. It safely accesses nested properties without throwing an error if something in the chain is null or undefined. And the nullish coalescing operator, double question mark, returns the right side value only when the left side is null or undefined, perfect for setting default values. These features make JavaScript code dramatically cleaner and safer. Asynchronous programming is one of the most important concepts in JavaScript. When you fetch data from an API, read a file, or set a timer, those operations take time, and JavaScript doesn't pause and wait. Instead, it uses promises to handle these future values. A promise represents a value that will be available later. The old way to work with promises used then chaining. But modern JavaScript introduced async and await, which makes asynchronous code look and behave almost like synchronous code. You mark a function with the async keyword, then use await in front of any operation that returns a promise. Wrap it in a try-catch block to handle errors gracefully. This pattern is used everywhere in real JavaScript applications. The fetch function is JavaScript's built-in way to make HTTP requests to APIs. This is how almost every modern web application gets its data, from weather apps to social feeds to e-commerce platforms. You call fetch with a URL, and it returns a promise. You await that promise to get the response object, then call .json on it, and await that too, because parsing the response body is also asynchronous. The result is a plain JavaScript object you can work with like any other. In this example, we are calling JSOnPlaceholder, a free public API great for practice. You can run this exact code in your browser console right now and see real data come back. APIs are the backbone of modern web development. JavaScript classes, introduced in ES6, provide a cleaner syntax for object-oriented programming. A class is a blueprint for creating objects. The constructor method runs when you create a new instance and sets up its initial properties. Methods defined inside the class are available on every object created from it. Inheritance allows one class to extend another, gaining all the parent's properties and methods. The super keyword calls the parent class's constructor. You must call this before using the this keyword in a child class constructor. Classes are syntactic sugar over JavaScript's existing prototype-based inheritance. Under the hood, the mechanism is the same. But classes make the code much easier to read and write, especially for developers coming from other languages. Error handling is critical for building reliable JavaScript applications. The throw keyword lets you create and raise your own errors. The try block contains code that might fail. If any line inside throws an error, JavaScript immediately jumps to the catch block, passing the error object. You can read the error message, log it, or show it to the user. As your JavaScript projects grow, you will split code into multiple files. Modules are how you share code between files. In a module file, you use the export keyword to make functions, variables, or classes available to other files. Named exports use curly braces when importing and can have multiple per file. Default exports don't use curly braces and each file can only have one. In your main file, use the import keyword to bring in what you need. You can import specific named exports, the default export, or everything at once using the asterisk syntax. Modules help you organize code into small, focused, reusable files, a fundamental practice in all professional JavaScript development and the foundation of how frameworks like React and Vue are structured. Let's bring everything together and build a real to-do application using pure JavaScript. We store our tasks in an array. The add_todo function creates a new object with an auto-generated ID using date. Now which returns the current timestamp in milliseconds, guaranteeing a unique number every time, plus the task text and a done flag set to false. We push this object into our to-dos array. The complete todo function uses the array_find method to locate a specific task by ID and marks it as done. The list_todos function uses forEach to print every task with a visual status indicator. This project uses variables, arrays, objects, functions, arrow functions, template literals, and array methods. Virtually everything covered in this course. JavaScript has one of the largest and most vibrant ecosystems of any programming language. React, created by Facebook, is the most popular library for building user interfaces and is used by some of the biggest websites in the world. Vue is a more approachable alternative that many beginners find easier to start with. Node.js takes JavaScript to the server side, letting you build APIs and backend services. Express is the most popular framework for building Node.js APIs quickly. TypeScript adds a type system on top of JavaScript, catching errors before you run your code. It is the standard at most large companies. NPM, the Node Package Manager, gives you access to over 2 million free, open-source libraries. And Next.js combines React and Node.js into a full-stack framework for building complete web applications. You have just covered the entire foundation of JavaScript in 10 minutes. Here is your roadmap from here. The single most important thing is to build projects. Start with a simple counter, then a quiz app, then try fetching real data from a public API and displaying it on a web page. Make sure you also understand HTML and CSS, because JavaScript needs a web page to interact with. For getting a job in web development, learning React is your highest priority next step. It is listed in more job postings than any other front-end technology. Then explore Node.js and Express to build your own APIs. TypeScript is essential once you start working on larger codebases. For structured practice, Free Code Camp and the JavaScript 30 Challenge by Wes Bos are excellent free resources. And JavaScript.info is simply the best free JavaScript reference on the internet. Incredible work! Let's recap everything you have learned today. You now understand what JavaScript is and how to run it with zero setup. You know the difference between const, let, and var and when to use each one. You can work with all of JavaScript's data types and use modern template literals. You can write functions in all three styles: classic, expression, and arrow. You understand strict equality with triple equals. You can loop through data using all three modern approaches. You know how to transform and filter arrays using map, filter, and reduce. You can read and manipulate HTML pages using the DOM. You understand promises and async await for handling asynchronous operations and fetching API data. And you have seen classes, modules, error handling, and built a complete to-do application. Subscribe to Learn with AI, and the next course in this series, Learn HTML and CSS in 10 minutes, is coming very soon. Keep building, keep coding, and I will see you there.